So tell us about the new project. Let's start there. Tell Homeland Security that we're the bomb.
Yeah, tell Homeland Security we are the bomb. It's a lyric from one of my songs. It's the title of the book. But, you can take it in two ways. There's a few levels, obviously. One, it could be braggadocio. But then two, we are the thing that's the threat to the status quo. We're the people are the thing they need to be worried about. So
I'm interested in how you see all of that, or how you approach or balance race, class, political struggle, organization.
It's not a balance. They're all they need each other. I mean, racism has a utility. It's not just there and maybe it's over here and then class is over here. I mean, the idea of race was created to justify the slave trade, to justify the transatlantic slave trade, to justify chattel slavery. So that the idea of race was created to make the white working class of Europe feel safe. That, hey, we're enslaving them in this way, not you. Don't worry, and this is why, And that was the origin of the theory of race. And even right now, race has a utility, and it has to do, that utility has to do with how the ruling class needs to exploit the whole working class. And it needs racism against people of color in order to exploit the whole working class. So here's how that works. First of all, for capitalism to exist, there must be a large group of unemployed people. At least there needs to be a certain percentage of unemployed folks. Because if you have full employment under capitalism, then you don't even need a union, because you can say, hey, I want 3 times more, and they can't even threaten to fire you. They need to have a reserve army of unemployed workers to threaten the workers that exist right now. That's just part of the program. They have to do that, because otherwise wages go up. You have financial publications like Wall Street Journal who will publicly worry when the unemployment rate goes down too much, because that means wages go up. So we know that that unemployment is an inseparable part of capitalism. It cannot function without that. What do we also know about unemployed people? Unemployed people are just like employed people. They need to eat. So if you got a large group of people without jobs that need to eat, they're going to get jobs in the illegal economy. Illegal business is the same as legal business. They both have to regulate themselves, and they both use violence to regulate themselves. Violence is something necessary for business. So if you have a legal business, let's say a supermarket, and you take a carton of groceries out and don't pay for it, you are going to be met with a physical force. Now, that physical force may be the security of the supermarket, and it may be the police. The police is who backs up the laws, and they back it up with physical things. You have a zoning, even just things like zoning, like this is my building, this is my lot right here. Somebody can't just come build over there, because the police are going to come if it goes down to it, right? So police are the physical force that regulates legal business. Illegal business does not have the police. They do not have legal regulations. You cannot go to a court and say, Your Honor, I was supposed to be getting a whole key of cocaine, but this is 80% baking soda. I demand restitution. You cannot do that. You can't go to the zoning commission and say, look, I know this is zoned for 3 dope dealers over here, but really the market right here can only take 2. Let's rezone this and get this settled. No. Illegal business doesn't have the police to regulate it. Illegal business regulates itself, and that takes violence, right? That takes, at the very least, a show of force to make it happen. And it's always been that way. So we know certain things, that violence in black communities is a natural outgrowth of capitalism. You will never get rid of that as long as you have capitalism. that we also know that there then needs to be a way to portray that by the ruling class. The ruling class needs to portray that in some way other than this is a natural outgrowth of capitalism, because then you start thinking, well, what also is a natural outgrowth of capitalism? Why is that? That means poverty is a natural outgrowth of capitalism. And so what the idea that gets put out there is that, okay, these folks are the impoverished ones. And they tell the rest of the working class, you're not impoverished, they're impoverished. And their poverty is caused by their own bad decisions. Their poverty is caused because they don't, study right. They need to learn how to talk to each other, and things like that. And even, and it's not even just the right wing that puts this forward. Even nonprofit organizations come and say, there's all this violence in the street. We need to teach people how to learn how to be men. Or we need to teach people how to learn how to talk to each other nicely. We need to teach people how to learn how to wear the right color tie to a job interview. And this will solve all of these things. And the truth is, a lot of those people in those organizations know better. Right. They just need a job. And the foundations are paying for this certain line to be put out there. Right. And so we have this idea of what causes poverty and what causes the conditions that people are living in. And that idea that keeps getting pushed is this racist idea that it's caused by the bad decisions of people. And that's not even just put out by white people. That idea is put out by people that's put out by conscious rappers. That's put out by rappers that might be classified as gangster rappers. This whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, which is saying, look, you have this ability, you're fucking up. You are fucking up, and get yourself together, So
I can't help but to catch the pun that it should be by these boots that we pull ourselves up, right? But I mean, in terms of, but to add just a little to the point, but if we follow this line of reasoning that you're talking about, in terms of collective redress of institutional oppression, capitalism, it would be a process by which we all could pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Yeah, well, our bootstrap, that would mean
Boots
destroying the
Riley's
system.
analysis.
That would
That's
be
what I mean.
destroying the system.
Yeah.
So the utility in that image, though, is that all of a sudden you have the rest of the working class who thinks, okay, poverty comes from bad decisions. I know this because I'm looking at how people of color are, and I don't know about that. So you might have a white dude who makes $21,000 a year being like, well, I'm middle class, right. and identifying with the police that are keeping down the savages, right? And identifying with this whole idea that the system works for the working class, right? So it has a utility. You aren't going to get rid of racism until you get rid of the need for the racism in the first place. Racism makes a lot of money because they don't have to then oppress the whole working class. Right. They don't have to hold back the whole working class in the same way. It's a lot cheaper, right? So that's the point. It's intrinsically linked, but you aren't going to be able to handle that until you start engaging in class struggle.
Now, part of the reason for my question was that I've seen you over the years. You know, obviously there are a lot of different nationalisms in and out of hip hop in the black community and in various wings of political struggle. I've seen you at times even come into some degree of conflict with people who question, well, why should we be on this Marxist line, or why should we be in this class line and not this race first line? So in part, that was where I wanted to just give you a chance to more fully explain where you're coming from and let people hear that, because even for those of us, me admittedly, who start with a race first analysis, are frustrated with the absence of class and the times when folks in and out of hip hop are unwilling to deal with either class or some of the thinkers that have influenced you, black, white, or other, that I think are important as well. So I just wanted to have you respond a little bit to that.
Well, okay, beyond what I just said right there, which is part of that answer, let's think about what creates culture, right? Because culture is definitely intrinsically part of who, if you want to say, one particular race or ethnicity is. What creates culture is what people do while they're surviving, right? It comes from where they are, what they have to do to survive, and all those things that go around it. It's going to be different depending on whether fishing villages create fishing songs, right? You try to teach a fishing village an agricultural song, they might think it's catchy. They might even sing along sometimes, but it's not going to make them start all of a sudden digging up the ground, right? And so what is the basis of who we are has to do with how we survive, how we make money, right? So, which brings us back to making this table, right? So if how we make money is that we make this table and we hand it all to the ruling class, that aspect of us is creating the largest part of our culture, right? So without handling that, we can't handle anything else. We can handle how we, with the $30 we get from this table, how we divide that up amongst each other, or why aren't you spending your 30 cents with me instead of spending it over there? And nobody's looking at the rest of the $250 that we're handing to the ruling class, right? And so that's what some of the cultural nationalism does, is it says, okay, we three people made this table and they're getting very little, but that's not the problem. The problem is that those folks need to work together more. That's true. They need to work together more. But what do they need to work together to do?
Right.
They need to work together to get rid of that economic model where they're giving $250 of the thing that they created. Because this table without the labor is worth about $2 at the most, and just the raw materials. Right. And even those raw materials, somebody dug them out the ground. Right? So without looking at it, then we end up coming with a model where we try to get somebody else to be on top, taking the $250. Oh, he's black. He took my $250 for this table I made, and everything's all good, And they paint, they wear nice colored suits, and drive the kind of car I would want to drive.
Absolutely.
So it's all good.
Yeah.
I mean, if race first was a thing, then Nigeria would be golden right now.
Sure.
Right.
First, not last, or only would be my point. But not, and that's sort of my point. That even where I recognize the value in a race first analysis, it can't be only and it can't be last, because then this question never gets dealt with, or the cooperation with the rest of the people on the planet never gets properly dealt with. So I definitely appreciate your response there.